Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera, where it is finally Hanami season. For those of you who don't know, Hanami is a Japanese word which is made up of two kanji characters. The first character is hana, which means flower, and the second one is mi, which means to see or look. And when you put the two words together, Hanami, it means a flower viewing or flower looking, or it's kind of hard to precisely translate into English. But of course, through the beautiful cherry blossoms around, this is when people go out to look at the flowers. So this is called the Hanami season. And it's not just the cherry blossoms which are in bloom. The mimosas and other flowers are also in bloom. And besides looking very beautiful right now here in Japan, it smells very beautiful as well. The parks are quite busy with people coming out to enjoy Hanami and to relax and have their lunch underneath the cherry blossoms, to eat their lunch. And drinking alcohol is kind of a traditional thing to do here. The parties go on during the day and sometimes late into the night. And if you go anywhere around Tokyo, to any park in the city center, after say 8 o'clock tonight, you'll find a lot of the ground spaces taken up by company workers, enjoying some quick food and a little bit of drinking before they go home. So, wonderful time to be here in Japan. Anyway, the subject of today's video is going to be a camera or a kind of camera which I haven't really reviewed before on my channel. Quite an unusual one, because this is a 110 camera. A 110 camera, of course, is a camera which uses 110 film, which was developed by Kodak and was a very popular format throughout the 70s and 1980s. It was very popular because it came in small, compact cartridges and was very easy to use. You didn't have to be, it required no skill to load the camera. The cameras which used 110 film were very small and compact and could be fitted in a pocket. The most common ones were, say, like the Kodak Instamatic 110. A very popular camera, one which I remember from my youth, the most popular camera around in America in those days. Pretty much everyone had one of these 110 film cameras. And a lot of pictures of me and my siblings from our childhood were taken on 110 film. And it's kind of a shame that 110 film didn't retain its popularity. It's a little bit hard to find nowadays, but you can still find 110 film on Amazon. It's made by a few different makers, and of course you can always find it on places like AliExpress if you'd like to shoot with this film. If you've got an old, say, Kodak Instamatic or similar camera which has been in your family for a long time and you don't want to throw it away, you have some, like I don't know, it might bring back some memories or have some sentimental value for you, you should go out and go ahead and use it. Interesting thing about 110 film is that despite its small size, it's still a high quality film with a good amount of resolution, superior to most of the smaller digital cameras today. You can still shoot with it, you can still get it developed, and you can still have prints made from it. And the 110 format is perfectly good for, I guess, the fireplace prints, 4x6 prints or desktop prints, the ones that are still very popular today. If you like to scan film digitally, a lot of the newer film scanners, the compact ones, which are rather inexpensive and allow you to scan smaller format cameras, you can get 110 inserts for these, and of course you can scan your 110 negatives and share them digitally or print them digitally. So it's not an entirely dead or useless format, and I think that some people, there are some people who are real fans of this format, certain artists and street photographers and such who love the 110 format, mainly because it really brings out all the characteristics of film, that really organic look which you can't really get in digital. We have a lot of digital cameras, especially Fuji and stuff, which have programs to try to mimic the effect or organic feeling or colors of film, but you really can't do that precisely. If you want the organic film look, of course you have to use film. So let's go ahead and take a look at the camera. First, Kodak, the Pentax Auto 110 was introduced in 1978, and it ran through about 1985 or 1986, and there were a few different variations available. And what is interesting about the camera is that it was an SLR system camera, which came with a large number of accessories. Go ahead and take the top off the box here, and in the camera box we have the camera, which is inside its original case. Of course, this case is kind of what I call pleather or plastic leather, and kind of the pleather is deteriorating and leaving black stuff everywhere, but luckily on the inside it's a high quality cloth which protects the camera. Over here we have a motor drive or power window or power winder. I'm having issues with my car recently, and so the word power window comes to mind. Over here we have the lenses. The camera is fitted, of course, with a standard lens, and this kit comes with a telephoto lens and a wide angle lens. And here we have a flash. So let's go ahead and take a look at the camera. I'll go ahead and take it out of its pleather case, which I think is a little bit better than what we call like the never ready case. You have to be careful that you don't lose the lens caps on these. These are very easy to lose the lens caps in the little 110 camera. As you can see, the inside is a very nice material compared to the outside. No pleather particles on the inside. This is the camera itself, and as you can see, very small. It fits in the palm of my hand. It fits in pretty much in any kind of coat pocket. This is a real SLR camera with interchangeable lenses, and actually a very high quality piece of engineering. The construction is plastic, of course. Pretty much all 110 cameras were made out of plastic, but by the late 1970s, plastics were, the design of plastics or the formulation of plastics was at an advanced state. So there isn't kind of the issues we have with the deterioration or cracking or the gassing of earlier plastics, which we had in older cameras. Signs of this gassing are things like haze on the lens or deterioration or oiliness on the grip surfaces or on the plastic itself. Very high quality in the Pentax Auto 110. Let's go ahead and take a look at the features, controls, and functions, and starting at the top here. On the top left here we have this kind of button kind of thing, and we have this cover here, and this is where you attach the flash. And when you attach the flash to this camera, part of it pushes in on this button, and then it switches the camera to the flash mode. The flash is kind of useful for this camera because as it is an automatic camera with a very compact design, it doesn't have a very large range of shutter speeds or aperture combinations. So in really low light situations under, say, 1/30th of a second, a flash is really a handy thing to have, and this camera offers automatic flash operation. The viewfinder on the back here, when I first looked through one of these, I was very surprised at how bright the viewfinder was. I expected that a tiny camera with a tiny lens and a small viewfinder would have a very dim and hard to use, image on the focusing screen, but it turns out that that's not the case. It was surprisingly bright, and it has a wonderful split prism focusing system on it. And what this does is it kind of splits the image, and in order to focus the camera, you line up the split halves of the image until you end up with a single lined up image, and that means that your subject is in focus and you can shoot. On the bottom right hand of the viewfinder, you have a LED light, which is either green or orange. If you are shooting it and you depress the shutter button and the green light shows, then the camera is okay to shoot and go ahead and take the photograph. If the orange light shows, then that usually means that the aperture is too small and the shutter is going to be shooting, or the light is too low. You can't really adjust the aperture on this camera. The light is too low and the shutter will be firing at a speed lower than 1/30th of a second. So you should hold the camera more firmly or use the tripod. On the right side here, we have the shutter release button, which accepts a standard cable release. Here we have the film winding and shutter charging button. And an odd thing about this camera is it has a double stroke system for winding the film, kind of like an old Leica M3 and certain other cameras which I've come across. I think like the Minolta V3 and such also have a double stroke one. I'm not really sure why they need a double stroke system in a camera like this. Possibly it might have plastic gears on the inside, and in order to reduce the tension on the gears and make them last longer or be more reliable, they use a double stroke system. That's the excuse which Leica used on their early M3 cameras, that the double stroke system decreased the tension on the drive line and it would be more durable. I love the quiet operation of the shutter. Very smooth, and as this is a small and lightweight camera, it doesn't have a lot of vibration, so you don't have to worry much about a camera shake or blur when you're shooting. Moving further down the back, we have this big window here, and if you load film in the camera, if you look through this window, you can see the kind, the type, and the film speed of the film that you have selected for the camera. Very simple. As I mentioned before, there aren't a large variety of films available for these cameras today, but it's not hard to find. You can usually order it through Amazon and have it by tomorrow. On the bottom of the camera, we have a couple of contacts here, a standard 1/4-inch tripod socket, and a place for the motor drive to be attached. I guess a metal coupling for the motor drive system. On the front of the camera, we have just the lens itself with a focusing scale which is arranged in both meters and feet. Kind of clever system the way they did this. I kind of wish that they did it kind of this way in some of the larger cameras rather than just doing feet or meters. The way they do it here is a very intelligent way, using the blue numbers for feet and the other numbers for meters. It's very easy to use, a clever system. We have a lever here on the right which allows you to remove the lens. And looking in the front here, you can see the aperture blades. It's kind of odd that the camera has a square aperture. And the combination of the blades and the mirror in the back operate the entire function of the camera, the shutter and the aperture. It's a very, what engineers call an elegant system. Very simple, very accurate, and very reliable, and requiring a minimum of parts. This is the standard lens on this camera. This is a 24mm f2.8 lens, which gives you something close to what we call a standard 50mm focal length. This is a very good lens for general use and for outdoor use in normal situations, and also for taking photographs of people. Where you want to be reasonably close but not too close to them, and where you want to be able to take pictures of them without distorting their facial features. One problem with shooting with wider angle lenses is the closer you get to a person or your subject, there's some distortion. If you take a close-up picture of a person with a wide angle lens, it gives you like that really big nose look like you see on those pet calendars with the dogs with the really big noses. The 50mm lens, you can't quite get that close, and if you're at a normal range where you get a nice view of a person's face, then you get a nice picture without distorting their facial features. Another problem I have is like when shooting kids or whatever, you have a couple of kids together, and if one is closer to the lens than the other kid, you're shooting with a wide angle lens, it makes the head of the closer kid much bigger than the head of the kid which is behind them. That's another problem which you can solve with this. A lot of people, studio photographers, use a short telephoto lens when they're doing portraits and things like that, which this camera includes, and this makes this eliminates any distortion when you're doing portraits or things like that. This is the standard lens. I said is close to a standard 50mm focal length. If I remove this lens, I can attach the wide angle lens here, and this is an 18mm lens. And to put on the lens, you line up the red mark here on the lens to the red dot on the camera, kind of like the larger Pentax SLR cameras. And this lens seems to give me something closer to, I think, 28 or 30mm focal length, quite a wide angle. And this is very suitable for shooting indoors or for narrow streets or alleyways or in crowds of people who are close together. It allows you to get everything inside the image. This is my favorite lens when I'm going out for doing things like street photography or shooting in train stations or things like that. I really love the 28mm lens or its equivalent in other formats. Interesting that this camera still had all of the caps and such with it, and also the original filters included with the camera. That's something I don't often see. This lens here is the telephoto lens, and let me go ahead and line up the marks as I showed you how to do before. And this one here, take off the filter so you can get a better look at it. A very beautiful piece of glass. This is a 50mm f2.8 lens, which translates roughly something between like a 135 and 150mm in standard 35mm format. The quality of the lenses in these cameras is quite amazing. Pentax made some very wonderful lenses in the late 70s and in the 80s, and this technology, which was available at that time, was even used in these smaller, more compact, and supposedly less expensive cameras. I really like this focal length for shooting landscapes. A lot of people think that, say, standard or wide-angle lenses are better for landscapes. The kind of landscapes I like are things like mountain scenes or beach sunsets or things like that, and I find that the telephoto lens kind of compresses perspective, and I like the effect, especially on something like sunsets. Back in the days when there wasn't a pandemic, we liked to go to Hawaii once or twice a year. It's kind of the closest place, the closest American territory we can visit here from Japan. It's only a 7-hour flight, and I love to take pictures along the beach there in Oahu. And I always bring my a big old Nikkor 50-300 ED zoom, because I love the way that this lens handles sunsets and landscapes and things like that. And in this small format here, this is a perfect lens for that kind of use. I shot one of these cameras about a year or so ago. I got one with just the standard lens, and out of curiosity I went out and I shot with it, and I actually had quite a good time with it. I was in a camera shop a few years ago, and I was looking at an Olympus pen, and I was talking to some other foreign guy in the shop, and he was talking about how he liked shooting the Pentax 110, and he was there looking for a particular lens for the 110 he had. And yeah, I didn't pay much attention to what he said at the time, but when I finally got one, it turned out to be a very interesting camera, and a much higher quality one than I imagined. Let's take a look at the flash here while we've got this apart. And this is a very nice flash and uses the standard AA batteries. And luckily this camera and lens, they seem to store everything carefully. There's no corrosion anywhere. When I got this camera, it still had batteries in the camera body, and I was quite surprised that the batteries were still charged and the camera was still usable. It's very tight. It looks like it may never even have been used before. Judging by how clean the contacts are, there are no marks from the batteries having been put in or taken out, and that's more than a slight possibility that this flash has never been used. I take a lot of photographs, but I never use a flash. Attaching the flash is quite simple. You take off the plastic cap here on the lens body, and you attach the flash, and it kind of screws in like this. And that's what the camera looks like with the flash attached. The flash is about the size of the camera. I guess they didn't go to a lot of work to making the flash more compact, but this is an automatic flash, so I guess it requires a little bit more electronics, and I guess computerized electronics, if you can use that word, in the 1970s were of course a little bit on the primitive side. A lot of these cameras which I see don't have the plastic cap on the top. It's no big deal. The camera will still work without the plastic top. And of course we have the power winder here, and this is very simple to put on compared to like the full-size SLR cameras. You just put it on and just wind the thumb wheel here, and it holds itself on with the tripod socket, and that's the camera with a motor drive or power winder, whatever you want to call it, attached. Switches are quite simple, off and on, and the same thing on the flash here, off and on. There aren't any levers, dials, or anything to operate. The camera is fully automatic. Now, who'd want to shoot a camera like this in 2022? And hopefully people will be watching this in the future and say, wow, 2022, wow, way back then, you know, I can't believe people were using it. They're real popular today. But anyway, people who like this camera are, as I mentioned before, people who really like the organic look of film and really want to bring this out in their images. Being able to, to get the grain or the kind of color, which, you know, I still can't, even though digital camera companies try hard to kind of bring back the original feeling of film. You know, if you have the film camera to begin with, you don't really have to try to get the effect of film. You already have the film. And 110 camera, of course, this is going to be, you know, all the things which I guess marketing people say are the drawbacks or the negative aspects of film are the same things which other people think are the positive aspects of film. And if you're one of those people who is different than other people and who really likes to try different things or different kind of equipment, and you like photography and a small compact camera, and especially if you like a camera which is really good for, say, candid or street kind of shooting, Pentax camera, the 110A, is a really good choice. There were a few different variations of these cameras which were produced over the years. This is kind of the standard variation in the black color. I see sometimes some demo models here in Japan which are made of clear plastic, and this is kind of to show people what the camera looks like on the inside when it's on a display stand. And surprisingly, these cameras are fully functional, believe it or not. And then there were, I guess, these kind of safari or khaki colored cameras which were kind of a green, olive green, and a beige color. And I see those from time to time, though I haven't actually seen one of those yet which actually works, which is odd because normally these cameras are very reliable. And during the years, there were more lenses and accessories which were made available. When the camera was first introduced, it was pretty much available as a single camera and a camera with a single lens and a case and such, and Pentax designed the camera planning to add more lenses and accessories later on, which thankfully they did. They didn't do it right away because they were kind of curious about how popular the camera would be and if it would catch on with the public. And judging by the numbers of these cameras which I see here in Japan, it was a very popular seller here. I got this one here for a reasonable price, thinking that I would have to do a lot of work to it, but surprisingly, despite its age, it's pretty much, other than the rotten pleather case, it's in an amazing condition. There's no haze or fungus or deterioration whatsoever in the lenses. The viewfinder is spotless. It looks like the flash and even the motor drive have never had batteries put in them. A really wonderful camera. I plan to be putting this camera up for sale shortly on my online store, so if you're interested in buying a Pentax 110, please check out my stores. As I said in recent videos, I'm trying to do as many videos as I can. I'm trying to shoot for, say, every other day or every third day, because I'm getting a lot of new and interesting stuff. And as I've also said in previous videos, I'm really trying to grow this channel to get more people interested in vintage cameras, Japanese and otherwise, and also increase their interest in film, which I still think is a really wonderful format even today in 2022. If you want to help me grow the channel, please subscribe and please click the like button. That helps very much. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.